Hi! So, a little while ago I was thinking about Grandma and Grandpa Jensen and some of the experiences that I have with them and some of my favorite memories of them. And as I was doing this, I of course thought of all of you and some of our experiences together. And then I started to think about how your experiences or stories with Grandma and Grandpa Jensen might be different than mine. And I started to wonder what some of those differences might be. So I reached out to all the cousins and asked everybody to send me a video of them sharing their favorite story of Grandma and Grandpa Jensen, or a memory or experience that they had with Grandma and Grandpa Jensen that they love. And so here they are.
Favorite memories of Grandpa and Grandma?
There's a lot of them.
Go.
My favorite memory of Grandma is when we would go over, when we lived in Raymond, we'd go over and we would sit and she would read storybooks, Disney storybooks to us.
My favorite memory about Grandpa and Grandma was when I used to play with with Grandpa's sprinklers in the backyard and screw them up. Yeah.
My favorite memory of Grandma and Grandpa, I have two. One is whenever I look at this blanket, I always think of Great Grandma and Great Grandpa because, I always think how much I miss Great Grandma and how excited I'll be when I see Great Grandpa in Alberta this summer. And so I'm really excited for that. And my second thing is sometimes when I think of Great Grandpa, I think of how he taught me how to ride his little green tractor. We would ride it around, sometimes each day. We would ride it around his backyard, and we would have fun. And he taught me how to drive it.
Oh, hey, how's it going there? Just doing a little bit of stick handling skills here. Going to have to say that one of my favorite memories of the farm would have to be, because out on the ice there in the pond, where we used to go and play hockey. It's where I perfected a lot of my hockey skills, my hockey quickness, and my hockey shot with this beaut.
And so I was in the wheelchair, and Cole was pushing me. I wasn't pushing at all. And then going down the hallway to Grandpa and Grandma's bedroom, and you just hear Grandma yell, "Don't hit the wall!"
And then boom!
Hit it. He threw me into the wall.
The scar of which is still there to this day. If you go to that back hallway, there's still like the mark from the hole.
And I swear, I am not joking, Grandma got up and ran after us. Oh, that was the scariest time of my life.
I remember one summer, Grandpa borrowed Delbert's horse and put it in his horse trailer along with Happy, and I got to go to the ranch by myself with Grandpa. The fence between his ranch and the neighbor ranch had fallen down, and some of the neighbors' cows had gotten onto Grandpa's land, so I got to ride a horse and help Grandpa round up cows, drive them back to the other ranch, and fix the fence. And it was really special because a lot of times when we went to the ranch, there were a lot of grandkids going along, and I really loved being the only one with Grandpa and spending that one-on-one time with him.
One of my favorite memories was going out to Grandma and Grandpa's with Tyler, and we'd stay up late playing cards with Grandma and Grandpa, and I remember playing golf with them. And as somebody was dealing out the cards, Grandpa would look at all four of his, and we were only supposed to look at two. And then Grandma would catch them, and she'd say, "Reed, quit looking at all your cards!" And we just laugh and continue playing the game. And usually when we were done, then we'd get dressed up and go check cows with Grandpa again, and we'd come in and go to bed. So that was one of my favorite memories.
Some of my best memories of Grandma and Grandma Jensen are when I used to go up and visit them when I was at BYU, and I would drive up to Barnwell, and Grandma and I just would stay up really late having really great talks, and Grandpa would always fix our car up and fill it with gas, change the oil, get it ready for the trip back, and sometimes we'd bring friends, Mona and I would, or Scott would come down and visit, and we'd meet there. And we just had some really good visits. Those are some of my best memories with Grandma and Grandpa Jensen.
My favorite memory of Grandpa and Grandma is seeing them in white in the celestial room after my endowment, knowing that families can be together forever.
One of my favorite memories of Grandma and Grandpa Jensen is going to their house and playing cards. I remember when we were younger and we would sleep over, the adults would stay up super late and they were super loud and they would play cards till all hours of the night, and I was so excited when I could stay up late and play cover your butt and have popcorn. I love Grandpa Jensen's popcorn. It's definitely my favorite. And I'm grateful and I'm happy to be part of a family that loves to laugh and spend time together and visit.
Oh, playing cards. Grandpa always wanted everyone to play cards. Still wants everyone to play cards. But that's something I remember. That's fun.
So my favorite memory would probably be us grandkids asking Grandma to take out her false teeth. And she would always do it for us when we asked. And she would make a funny face. And it made me laugh all the time. And it's just one of the things that it's one of my favorite memories of her. Also, I think picking raspberries with Papa in the summer, and I'm pretty sure we ate more raspberries than we picked, but it was always just such a fun time every time we came to visit, and I had only wished that we had gotten more time.
My favorite memory of Grandma and Grandpa Jensen is at their house when I always go raspberry picking. It's really fun.
My favorite memory of great grandpa and great grandma is probably raspberry picking, because when I was younger I used to do that a lot.
So my memories of Grandma are that she taught me how to quilt when I was 15, always had a quilt on, and I got to quilt with her often. My memory of Grandpa is that we took Aunt Carolyn and down to the Great Falls Airport. I was about 14. And after we dropped Aunt Carolyn off, Grandpa said that he wanted to go to the mall. So he kept trying to buy me something. He really wanted to buy me something, and I just didn't want anything. I was good. I was just along for the ride and having fun. We got to the men's section, and he found these swim shorts, and they were drawstring, and they were huge. Like, huge. I bet you I swear they were extra large or a triple XL. They were big. And they had a drawstring. And so Grandpa pulls on the drawstring and he says, "Hey, Mel, they've got a drawstring in them. They're a one size fits all." And so we had a good laugh over that, and it was really funny. And so after that, we always had this little joke of this one size fits all. Anything that could be a one size fits all, that we had our little joke.
So my favorite memories of Grandma and Grandpa are mostly all at the farm from when we were kids. And one funny memory I have with Grandpa is I was probably about maybe 10 years old, and he was trying to teach me to drive a tractor. And we were just driving along that gravel road right by the farmhouse, and I was just barely missing the ditch on either side constantly over and over. And we finally stopped at the stop sign and looked back, and it was just total S mark all the way along. I couldn't drive straight for the life of me. And Grandpa never taught me to drive a tractor again after that, so apparently I didn't pass that test. And my memories of Grandma, I have a few kind of favorite ones that stand out, and one, of course, is just her making butterhorns and laying the warm, fresh butterhorns out on the counter and just snitching as many as we possibly could and eating them all. They were delicious. I also remember Grandma just always taking us to school with her when she was the librarian. And it was funny because we would come and be on our summer vacation, and yet it was so fun to go to school with Grandma. We loved that. And the other memory that I have of Grandma is her showing me all her stuff that she had for her feet, her walkers, and I don't know, her special shoes and just everything. And for some reason I was fascinated by that. I remember her talking to me about it forever, and maybe that's why I became an OT, but I just remember all Grandma's special things she had for her feet and for walking. And so those are my good memories of Grandma and Grandpa on the farm.
My favorite memory about Grandma Jensen is that she would always let me watch kid shows, and that I could always get into the candy drawer.
Candy drawer?
Yeah.
Still a classic.
Stale chips.
Stale everything.
My memory of Grandpa is... My memory of Grandpa is doing stuff on the farm with him. My memory of Grandma is that she's either either had a quilt going, or and that she's always in a music group or a choir.
In the summer, we used to drive out from Ontario to Barnwell and stay at the farm. And it was always a lot of fun to see what Grandpa was doing on the farm and tag along with him. And he was always happy to have you tag along. And they did everything themselves. Grandpa and Grandma would, make bread and butter horns from scratch, or like bend and weld a piece of metal to fix a tractor. And it was really cool. And they're always happy to teach us about whatever it is they were doing and get help with that.
One of my favorite memories with Grandpa and Grandma is when we stayed up there for the 9 months. I remember that every morning, Grandpa and I would get up super early, and we would collect the newspaper, we would refill the bird feeder, and we'd make breakfast for our family, and that was one of my favorite things to do with him. I remember that he would always, or quite often, have cereal with olives in it, and I thought that was interesting, but I remember that, and it's one of the great memories that I have with them, and I'm so glad that I got to do that with Grandpa.
My first memory of Grandma and Grandpa Jensen were when Jordana and I were engaged, and we were traveling through southern Alberta, and we stayed one night over in Barnwell. And Grandma and Grandpa treated me so well. They made me feel like a member of the family, and I think I even started calling them Grandma and Grandpa on that trip, actually. Anyways, they made me feel so welcome and part of the family, and Grandpa even decided to prank me that night. He took one of my shirts and sewed the sleeves shut so that the morning I woke up and I couldn't stick my arms through the sleeves. I thought it was pretty funny, and made me feel like I was, a member of the family.
So one of my favorite memories would have to be Grandpa and Grandma Jensen's farm. Driving the tractors, driving that little red tractor that we used to hook the wagon to. Bubba and I would pull each other around in that wagon for hours. Run the wheels right off that thing.
Like, I remember racing Grandpa on his ride-on lawnmower, but he always took the newer ones, and he always won, but he always wanted to race me. So he always beat me, but not because he's a better driver. It's because he took the faster lawnmower.
Sneaky.
I mean, if we had equal lawnmowers.
I remember going to Grandma and Grandpa's house and watching kid shows there. But eventually Grandma would turn them off, and she would tell Dane and I stories of when she was a little girl.
I remember when we were at Grandma and Grandpa's house, and there was like 30 of us. We were all sitting at the table, and we were playing like this giant game of apples to apples, and it had been going on for like 45 minutes, and we've been playing, and it was like super heated. And all of a sudden, a police knocks on the door, and Grandma was like, "Oh, who could that be?" Because it was like 11:30 at night, and we opened the door, and it was a police officer, and he was like, "We got a call from this house, like, what's going on? Is everyone okay?" And then we were like, "Yeah, we're just playing a game." And then we realized that that Clara had dialed 911, and it was really funny. We were all laughing about it afterwards.
So I think my first favorite memory of Grandpa and Grandma is always going up to Tabor every summer for at least a week and you know, we would help Grandma with her quilts or help Grandpa, you know, in the backyard picking raspberries or just puttering in the house. And every night we would play cards, and then we would always have, Grandpa would always make his popcorn. And then the next morning we would always have biscuits and honey for breakfast, and Grandpa would always sing "You Are My Sunshine" when he first came up the stairs. And you know, I think still to this day, every time I hear that song, I always think of him and all those nights that all those summers that we spent at their house. I think I was in grade, I don't know, like 6 or 7, maybe grade 8, and we were playing in a basketball tournament in Tabor, and we played in the morning and we won, and so we were going to be in the finals. And instead of going all the way to Coots and then all the way back, Grandpa and Grandma offered up their whole house to the whole team to come and spend the afternoon there. And I remember we were just, you know, playing around, hanging out downstairs, and one of my other friends was just like, "You have the coolest grandparents for letting us all come to the house and hang out for the, you know, for the afternoon." She's like, "You're just so lucky to have such supportive grandparents and such loving grandparents." And I remember just thinking, like, I do have the coolest grandparents, because I don't know how many people would let a whole bunch of, you know, teenage girls into their house for the afternoon. I feel like it'd be pretty noisy. But I remember just thinking, I do have the coolest grandparents, and they are so great, and I'm so lucky to be part of their family.
My favorite memory of Grandpa and Grandma would be that they always tried to be at whatever sporting event I was at. Brody was at, Josie, Chase, Dan was at. They always put forth an effort to be there to show us that they loved us whatever way possible.
So I have a lot of favorite memories of Grandpa and Grandma, but my 2 favorite probably would be Grandma always taking out her teeth, and then picking berries with Grandpa. Those are probably my 2 favorite ones.
My favorite memory of Grandma was the very first time I met her. And I drove down from Edmonton to meet Cassandra, who was driving up from Utah. And Grandma welcomed me in and gave me a big hug and made me feel like part of the family from the very first day. I'm grateful for that. With Grandpa, I have lots of memories too. The first thing that I thought of, though, was about the time we went golfing together a couple years ago. And this was in Carson. And he got a hold of one of those golf carts and was speeding down the hill and thought he was hitting the brake and accidentally hit the gas and just about ran me over with the golf cart. And I think his heart nearly stopped that day. We got quite a laugh out of that.
One of my favorite memories and stories about Grandpa Jensen is when they lived on the farm. I was probably 6 or 7 years old, and Grandpa and I were out doing chores one morning, and we were driving his truck in a field and pulling a trailer behind us, and something fell off the back, probably a hay bale. And instead of stopping the truck to go grab it, Grandpa opened the door to the truck and told me to slide over and grab onto the steering wheel and hold it straight while he went out to fix it. And as a 7-year-old kid, I thought that was the coolest thing, that my grandpa was letting me drive his truck on his farm. That's something that I'll always remember. My favorite memory of Grandma is during the summer that Nikki and I lived with them. On Sunday mornings, when we'd get up and go upstairs to eat breakfast, Grandma was always watching music in the spoken word and singing along with the Tabernacle Choir. And we kind of teased her and made fun of her a little bit then. I like to joke about it with her. But looking back on it, that's one of my favorite memories of Grandma, her singing with the Tabernacle Choir and her love of music. And it's something that I'll always cherish and remember, is Grandma's love of music. And then the final memory that I want to share is during that summer that we lived with them, we stayed up late a lot, sharing stories and listening to stories. And they would tell us stories of when they were first married. And Grandpa is a trickster, we all know that. But when they were first married, he and some of his friends would pull pranks on people at their wedding receptions. So when Grandma and Grandpa were getting married, Grandpa was worried that people were going to retaliate. So they didn't tell anybody where they were going on their honeymoon because Grandpa was afraid. So they got married and they drove to Lethbridge to find a hotel room, but everything was booked. So they couldn't find a room in Lethbridge, so they had to drive to Fort McLeod. And the only place that they could get a room was at this little motel called the Cozy Motel. And Grandma told us that the bed was like in the wall and it folded down. And then when it folded down, there was a gap between the bed and the wall. And all night the pillows kept sliding off the bed into this gap between the wall. And it was a horrible sleep, it was a horrible night, and she was really mad at Grandpa because, you know, he didn't want to reserve a room, and it was just a really funny story.
My favorite story about Grandma, I think, would be one day Dane was over at Grandma's watching TV, and Grandma wanted to change to probably like Perry Mason or Matlock or something, and she asked Dane for the remote, and somehow in the passing of the remote, a button got pushed and the TV went all fuzzy, and she, frustrated, couldn't get it to go back to actual television. It was just the snow, and finally out of frustration, she gave the remote back to Dane and said, "You fix it." And then Dane fixed the TV. Dane was only like 4 or 5 at that time. It was, yeah. I think that's kind of funny. Probably my favorite story about Grandma. And then my favorite story about Grandpa, I think, would be from when I was 4 or 5. We had driven up through Logan's Pass with Grandpa, and it was spring or fall, I can't remember. So there was a little bit of snow, but it was just in the shadows and in the ditches. And anyway, we were driving, and we stopped to make a pit stop, a little bit of a restroom break, and there was a little bit of snow, and Grandpa, at probably 80 years old, started a full-fledged snowball fight, and we threw snowballs at each other for a good, see, in my memory, it seems like it was a good hour or so, but it probably wasn't that long. Anyway, but that's my favorite story about Grandpa. Lots of love from California. Love ya.
Ciao. So right now I have the chance to share with you a couple memories and impressions that both Grandpa and Grandma left on me throughout the years. The first one that I'd like to share is how half the vulgarity and half the swear words I know, I learned from them. And then the second thing would be, I always thought it was hilarious how Grandma would always yell, "Read!" And then Grandpa would respond by turning off his hearing aid and not listening to her at all. And then the last thing that I want to share, more serious, would be I always enjoyed the environment that was at their house. You knew that family was important to them and that you always felt loved, and that was something that has influenced me and impacted me, especially with the way that I view my family. And then, in closing, I'd just like to let you know, vi voglio bene, and have a good one.
Grandma and Grandpa, thank you for your examples. Thank you for your love. Thank you for these wonderful memories that we have of you. And the only thing left to say is, I love you.
Grandpa, I love you. You're the best. I really love hot dogs. Grandpa, I love you all the way to Pluto.
Love you, Papa. Love you, Grandma.
We love you.
I 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 love you both.
Just love you. Bye.
We love you, Grandma and Grandpa.
Love you, Grandpa. Miss you, Grandma.
I love you.